there it is.
There it is indeed.
Do you feel different now that we're in another year?
I never feel
I don't
different.
either.
I don't know if it's just me, or am I not right? Am I not right because I don't feel different? Time really doesn't have all that much meaning anymore after last year. Everything just kind of rolls into the next thing.
It's always been like
an
like
avalanche.
that.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I think the older we get, the more jaded we get. But it is indeed a new year, and this is a new episode of Cinema Discovery Project. This will be our newest episode, or first episode of the year.
After a little bit of a break.
Yeah, about a month and a half or so. Goes by
quick. We had to take a little break. I am now in my new digs. Wasn't too far of a move, about 30 minutes, but now I'm in my own new setup here. If we ever do video, maybe you'll get to see it one day. But
yeah, I was to say you're describing things that the audience can't see.
I know, but
so they wouldn't know the difference between the old digs and the new digs. I mean, I know.
Yeah, but I feel good about it. So
good, and that's the most important thing is that you feel good about it. So today we decided that to have more of a relaxed episode to start off the new year, not really doing too big of a focus on anything in specific, more of a casual kind of talk that Steven and I usually have.
Well,
just on the regular.
This will feel more loose than usual.
Yes.
Our typical episode, we focus on one film, and a lot of people are coming out with their best of 2020 lists right now. But thing is
right.
All of the films are not released yet. And being that the Academy Awards has gotten pushed back about a month or so.
I think it is.
So a lot of movies are kind of getting more time to come out. So we're gonna wait and maybe do it on our next episode, our best of 2020.
Right.
But this week we decided that it is January, and typically January is looked at as a kind of dumping ground for films that nobody wants to see.
Yeah, that's the way it's been for a long time, up until like the last decade or so. Granted, it's still a dumping ground, but sometimes you get some diamonds in the rough, and we thought that we would just talk about like the uniqueness of January and kind of like some January gems.
Yeah.
I just made that up off the top of my head, because there are some gems that come out in January, but doing research for this episode, I found that there is a concept of a dumping month or dumping months when it comes to the release schedule of the year. And I found that those months tend to be August and September and January and February. Now, that's kind of morphed over the last couple of years because there have been so many summer blockbusters that they get, inevitably higher quality ones get pushed into October, and then usually September you just start getting more of, that post-summer blockbuster movies, but you also get that kind of pre-Oscar award season movies that tend to be, some tend to be more solid than others, and then you get even more, kind of a push from the post-summer blockbuster season, where sometimes you get blockbusters in September.
Every once in a while, a studio will take a chance on a movie in like September or August because nobody else wants to put their movies in there because, maybe you can come up with your theories. Maybe it's because kids are going back to school,
Yeah, or people have spent all their money on
vacations and stuff like that,
summer activities.
So that's why people don't like to put movies there. But every once in a while, the one that always comes to mind is when Marvel put out Guardians of the Galaxy in like August.
Yeah,
and it blew up.
That really skyrocketed the August, the August season, the August month, and that was. 2014,
something like that. And the same thing can be said for January sometimes. I mean, not necessarily for movies that release in January, but a lot of times putting a release out at the end of the year, it will trickle into the new year and will continue to make money. But I mean, it's
what has happened basically, usually December wasn't a big money making month because with the holidays and everyone was distracted by all that kind of stuff. People were still going to the movies, but they weren't putting in the same amount of um, you know frequency of viewing like the earlier part of the year. Basically, the end of the year was winding down, so there wasn't really a huge blockbuster swell of money making movies until 2015 when Star Wars Force Awakens came out and made like $1 billion. So then they were like, wait a minute, people want to watch movies in December now? So therefore, that pushed a lot of movies that would have probably come out in December. They probably pushed them more into the dumping month known as January, and January was already a dumping month because all the movies that the studios couldn't squeeze into the previous year were put in that month anyway. So anyhow, that kind of just squished even more. And also, they would put those movies in January because of like I said, the holiday months, people not spending money and whatnot. And typically, what's interesting is that a lot of horror movies drop in January, and I always thought that was kind of odd because it's further away from October, from the previous few months, as well as the following October. Yet people still would go see them, and they would make some decent cash because they were often cheap,
Yeah.
Lower budgeted, Blumhouse type horror movies would probably get released in January, but so that's that. So, but I think we're kind of just going to go back and forth. There's just some January movies that Steven and I did some research on and discovered came out during that month.
Yeah, I mean,
Steven, do you have a first
yeah, I mean,
one,
and the thing is what I realized in searching through January releases is that if you go back to the old days, that idea wasn't really a thing yet because they weren't releasing nearly as many movies.
Yeah, I don't think this happened until probably post 70s,
Yeah.
maybe even post 80s. Just because as we all know, the summer blockbuster didn't exist really until like the late 70s with Jaws and Star Wars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So obviously, as the years go on, more and more blockbusters get released, more things get moved around and pushed and all that kind of stuff. Money becomes the end-all be-all of the studio cinema mainstream world.
Yeah, and the studios figured out what were the best times, what were the most amount of times what time of the year people were going to see movies the most. So that the ideas changed of when to release movies. But back in before the 70s, movies would stay in theaters for vastly longer amounts of time. Sometimes a movie would stay in theaters for a year. Might stay in the year for 2 years. I mean, so their idea of when the best release time was just when it was ready to go. I think, it wasn't necessarily about strategic, points or anything like that because it was going to stay in theaters all year anyway.
Yeah, and what is interesting is that kind of led to a lot of, this is a whole other tangent, just the idea that they would probably spin the same film reels and over and over again to the point where they would just degrade and fall apart. That's why a lot of, the old films, you don't have the original, camera elements or the original masters or things or negatives because they would just, they would make so many copies from using them constantly that they would just, get worn down to nothing. Just like going back, the releases in January go back forever, and we're gonna get into some surprises because I found some old school surprises.
Yeah. There's one I got here, but I'll leave that one for you.
Okay, I don't know what it could be.
I know you might already know what I'm talking about. All right, but I'll start with one here. This is one me and you have talked about a little. We've talked about on it. I think we even did an episode on it. If I'm not mistaken, we did it a couple Christmases ago. Shop Around the Corner. 1940.
Nice. Yeah, I saw that too.
Shop Around the Corner with James Stewart. We talked about it, I think, a couple Christmases ago. And this came out in 1940 in January. So, maybe back then it wasn't a big deal, but, with time, and how this movie's kind of still, maybe not for everybody, but for, cinephiles, people that really keep up with classics and keep up with foreign films, things like that. Shop Around the Corner is a great film, and and I actually just ordered it myself. I
actually coincidentally got it for Christmas.
Yeah.
So the Blu-ray literally just came out. I want to say December 23rd, 2020, for those of you listening to this in the future at some point. The Blu-ray literally just came out. And Steve and I literally just
Warner
got
Archive.
Put out by Warner Archive, which it looks gorgeous. Yeah. It's gorgeous black and white. Jimmy Stewart is in it. We did talk about this movie coincidentally.
So if you want to hear us talk...
it's a charming
movie. If you want to hear us talk about it in depth, going through the whole movie, go find that episode. It's kind of one of them movies that isn't like too Christmassy. Like it's not a super Christmassy movie. Like it's not, the Santa Claus or anything, but it's set at Christmas time and it's about the spirit of Christmas, more than anything. It's about people and interacting, and it's a good movie.
It's a really good movie. Coincidentally, the movie that I want to piggyback off of that is actually the movie that came out the following week in 1940.
I think I know where this is.
Because this Shop Around the Corner came out January 12th, 1940, I believe. This movie came out January 18th, 1940, and this is His Girl Friday, starring Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell, directed by Howard Hawks. And this is a great screwball comedy. This is just really fast-talking, great dialogue, constantly moving, super energizing movie. This is definitely a movie I think we want to do an episode on sometime in the future. Because it's actually not the first adaptation of this story. I believe it's the second, but it's the most famous of the two. I think the first one was called Front Page and came out a few years before this movie came out. But this is one of the, I would say, quintessential, early Cary Grant films in his career, and it really defines the kind of exuberant, almost zaniness that Cary Grant could perform on screen. And it's one of my favorites from his and one of my favorite Howard Hawks film. And it's really good. I was really surprised that it came out in January of 1940. Apparently 1940s had a string of good January releases, like suspiciously notorious January releases.
I mean, it's like I said, it didn't really matter. That the idea of when it came out didn't really play into people's minds. I think more than just when it was ready to be done, they got it in, when it was time. But moving on, I guess if we're going down the decades, I feel like we're both heading just down the timeline here.
Right.
I'm going to skip one because I think you're going to want to bring this one up, but I'm going to skip a little bit ahead. You'll come back to the other one. 1945's movie we also have talked about, Laura, came out in January. Yes.
Really? I did not know that. Nice.
Laura's one of our favorite film noirs. We talked about it, a few months ago?
Like 2 months ago. Not even.
And, it's about it's in a lot of ways, it's a basic classic film noir where somebody's murdered and then there's a mystery, and then it kind of gets a spin on. We don't want to give away anything, but it it kind of has a nice twist in the middle there, and it's got some of the some great characters, and Gina Tierney's gorgeous and fantastic, and it's just a great film. Dana Andrews, like I said, we did an episode on it. Go back, check it out. If not, go watch Laura. It's easy to find. It's got, I think, a Fox release, and it's also been put out by Eureka in the UK. So, and I'm sure you can rent it. I'm sure very easily.
Nice. But I'm gonna go back a little bit, just piggybacking. Like I don't know why I'm using the same terminology again. Anywho, just to plug our podcast once again. A plug within a plug. I'm gonna Shadow of a Doubt came out January 15th, 1943, which we also did an episode on. It's also a film noir / thriller, directed by Alfred Hitchcock, starring Teresa Wright and Joseph Cotten. I believe it's Alfred Hitchcock's first American set film. we did a whole episode on it, so definitely go and check that out. But yeah, that came out in January. A Hitchcock film coming out in January. Just find that I find that odd to me.
You're gonna think that's odd, but honestly, it happened again not too long after that. 1959, North by Northwest came out. Yeah.
Wow, yeah. Nice.
So North by Northwest, once again, a Cary Grant film. This is a remake of one of his own movies, right? He did. It's kind of 39 Steps.
39 Steps.
So
kind of it's like a pseudo remake, or like kind of like it's weird because Alfred Hitchcock kept doing a lot of the same stuff over and over again. When it came to like the Wrong Man scenario and like someone on the run or something like that. So the 39 Steps is like a first run of that concept, and then the North by Northwest is like a more polished
it's Americanized. It's an Americanized version because it was after 39 Steps was before he came to America.
Yeah, that was like in the 30s. So, but it's like a more like refined like he was at the top of his game versus
this was right before he did Psycho.
Kind of.
I mean, he was about to do Psycho, and he'd already done a bunch of great movies before that. So,
starring Cary Grant, Eva Marie Saint, James Mason is in the movie. Martin Landau's also in the movie. It's an all-time. A lot of people's favorite.
We say like he's the master of horror or master of thriller, but like, he kind of, I think, mastered that paranoid thriller more than anything. That paranoid, where you think somebody's after you, or or the kid, the thriller more than the horror. I think aspects of his films, I think, are what he mastered. But yeah. So Hitchcock in January is the thing.
I guess so. Let me see what else I have here. I have some more earlier stuff. The Grapes of Wrath. Talk about super classic, both literature and, movie adaptation. Best Picture winner, I think, for 1940. The Grapes of Wrath, directed, I want to say, by John Ford. I'm looking it up right now. Yeah, directed by John Ford, starring Henry Fonda. John Carradine is in it. And it's like I said, it's an adaptation of the John Steinbeck novel, all about this family trying to survive during the Great Depression as they move westward to California to find just, jobs and a new life and all that kind of stuff. Really kind of a quintessential novel of, of the Depression era. And yeah, it's a really great film. I think it really holds up because there's a lot of, really good themes in it. And Henry Fonda is really fantastic in it. But that came out in January. It came out in January, and it's a Best Picture winner. Yeah, it had its New York premiere January 24th, 1940.
No. I got so more early ones. You're gonna make me do this because you haven't said it yet, but Casablanca came out in January. Yeah, 1943. I'm gonna let you talk about this one because it's your favorite movie, or my.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. Yeah, it came out January. What is that?
Well,
January 23rd, 1943. It's It's Casablanca, directed by Michael Curtiz, Humphrey Bogart, my favorite actress Ingrid Bergman, Paul Henreid, Claude Rains, Conrad Veidt is in the movie, Peter Lorre's in the movie, Ezzy Sakali is in it. Sidney Greenstreet, who always seemed to play like kind of a nefarious, like, bad guy in every movie he was in at the time. Sidney Greenstreet, who may or may not have been the inspiration for Jabba the Hutt in Star Wars. I don't know. I think that was a rumor I heard one time. It just feels like that. But yeah, this is an all-time classic for many, many different reasons. Also, Best Picture winner, I believe, as well.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we have won 3 Oscars: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Writing, Screenplay. So, yeah, this is something I definitely want to save for if we ever do an episode on it. We could really do a deep dive into it and kind of just go in and out of it and how.
Well, I'm gonna, you know how it is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to give you that movie one day because we've been picking movies for each other, or not for each other. We do that sometimes, but every other week we pick a movie, and usually we try to pick something that the other hasn't seen, if we can, which is hard sometimes because we both watch a lot of movies. Yeah, we'll probably get to Casablanca soon, I'm sure. But another Bogart movie. This one's directed by John Huston. Came out.
Oh, I know where you're going.
Came out in 1948. The Treasure of Santa Madre.
Yeah, the Treasure of the Sierra Madre, which is really fantastic. Yeah. This is a movie I don't think gets talked about enough.
I think out of all the Bogart movies I've seen, this is my favorite of his performances, personally.
It's really good. I know we talked about In a Lonely Place, which is another great Bogart performance, but this one's also really, really good, starring Walter Huston, the father of John Huston.
He plays really scuzzy in this movie, and I love it.
This whole movie's really scuzzy. But it's about finding a gold mine and hitting it rich, but also how like that basically corrupts you.
You can tell it had inspiration. You can tell it inspired Paul Thomas Anderson for There Will Be Blood. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Even that movie's got a Citizen Kane connection, definitely.
Yeah. Even though There Will Be Blood, I think is based off of a book called Oil. I think it is. But anywho, it's kind of the same idea. The idea of greed and money kind of corrupting you and just driving you mad, which is a really great concept. Great John Huston film. Let's see. There's nothing really else I have for the 40s, but something I do want to mention from, let me jump to the 60s now. I believe it's the 60s, and this was a surprise to me. When I was looking it up, 1964, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, Stanley Kubrick's great satirical take on the Cold War and the fear of nuclear war and stuff like that between the United States and the Soviet Union. This film came out January 29th, 1964, starring Peter Sellers, George C. Scott, Sterling Hayden, Slim Pickens in it. James Earl Jones, a really early role for James Earl Jones. He's one of the pilots.
If you ever want to see James Earl Jones youthful in some way, very youthful. He is.
Very youthful. And this movie is... I don't know if it's my favorite Kubrick movie, but if someone
it's up there.
Like, hey, what's your favorite Kubrick movie? I'd be like, Dr. Strangelove.
It's probably my favorite.
It's the first one that popped in my head. Either that or A Clockwork Orange. I rewatched Full Metal Jacket recently. That's one of my favorites. 2001, I think it's weird to say if 2001 is your favorite or if it's his best. I feel like those are always two different things.
Yeah, I don't know.
That movie's just so far ahead of its time that it's almost like you can't really quantify it in any way. But Dr. Strangelove is just an amazing movie to me. It's such a ballsy and ambitious film. Making fun of the Cold War within the Cold War is interesting to me because this is the post-Cuban Missile Crisis. This is what is interesting is this was originally supposed to come out, I want to say, in the fall of 1963, and then President Kennedy got assassinated, and that pushed the release. And I think that's why it came out in January.
Yeah.
So it's an all-time film. Peter Sellers plays what does he play, 4 characters in this movie? No,
3 characters.
Looks like, he plays Lionel Mandrake, President Merkin Muffley, and he plays Dr. Strangelove. So he was originally supposed to play the Slim Pickens character.
Yeah.
But apparently he got injured and couldn't, physically injured, so he couldn't do it. He couldn't sit in the plane or something like that. But yeah, so that's if we were ranking these, this was going to be pretty high on my list because that was our original concept for this episode. We were going to do our personal rankings, and this would have been 1 or 2.
All right. I'm going to move into the 70s.
Okay. I don't have any 70s on my list here. So
the movie starring Jack Nicholson, The Last Detail.
Ooh, now that's a movie.
Yes, a very good movie about, I guess you could say it's about, it's kind of a comedy, it's kind of a drama. You got these militant officers that are like, kind of like, are they like, if I'm remembering correctly, delivering a younger soldier to like a court? Didn't he have like a court date or something? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's directed by Hal Ashby.
Yeah, Hal Ashby.
Starring Jack Nicholson, a young Randy Quaid before he lost his goddamn mind in this movie. And Randy Quaid is the young Navyman. I don't know. Yeah, Navyman. Navyman who's is going to be I think they're escorting him to prison.
Yeah, he got,
and it's just their journey, kind of like getting him to this place, and it's just them.
Yeah, it's kind of a movie.
It's like a road trip movie.
It's basically a road trip movie. They're kind of letting him experience things, kind of give him his last hurrah of sorts, like throughout the trip. They go to a bar, and he's never had a drink at a bar because I guess he's too young. And so they it's a kind of a memorable scene where Jack Nicholson does his crazy thing and goes crazy on the bartender. But it's a good movie, good solid movie.
Yeah, it's based off of a novel as well. What was I saying? Richard Linklater's film Last Flag Flying was very similar to this. It was actually, I think it was maybe done by the same author. I'd have to look that up, but it was very almost like a spiritual sequel to because it was a screenplay by the same author, and I think based off of a book by the same author. Yes, that's why people brought up Last Detail when they were talking about this movie, Last Flag Flying, from a few years ago. Underrated movie, I think, from Richard Linklater. I guess. I mean, that's as good as a segue as I'm ever gonna get. That's as good as a segue as I'm gonna get for this next one. I'm gonna just burst through to the other side here and go with probably my favorite of any of the movies I came across when it came to January movies, and that is Before Sunrise. Richard Linklater's Before Sunrise.
You son of a bitch.
Yeah, I know. Since I just dropped Richard Linklater, I might as well talk about it now. This movie is an all-time favorite of mine. Like, if I was doing like an all-time top 15, top 20 movies, it's in there somewhere. It's the first of his Before trilogy. That is, has Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, and Before Midnight. I mean, if we ever get a fourth one, who really knows? The time has kind of elapsed to get a fourth one by now, but who knows if that'll ever happen? This one, as well as as its sequels, stars Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, and they play Jesse and Celine. And in this movie, they're two young people who meet on a train traveling through Europe, and they spend like one night in Vienna together, and it's one magical evening, if you will. It's one of the most genuine, like, sincerest romantic films I think I've ever seen and will ever see. It's just really, really authentic and genuine and magical, if that's too pompous of a word to use. But it's really good screenplay, really well acted, and it's just really fascinating how Richard Linklater made a movie so simply yet so profound as well, where it's just people walking and talking for an hour and 41 minutes.
Yeah, if you're into, I love it too. Some people don't get into it, but I don't mind a movie where people walk and talk as long as they're interesting people, and they're people that you can see yourself in. That's for movies like that. That's the stuff I get into is seeing. I mean, it's good to it's nice when you can see some of yourself in the characters in the film. Doesn't mean that it has to be that way. I think some people rely too much on that idea that they have to empathize or they have to relate to the characters in a movie for them to enjoy the movie.
Yeah, I think there are movies that are going for that human connection and that rely on that human connection. When it's such a personal, intimate film like this, I think that's necessary. Yeah. But a lot of films, I don't think specifically need that, and some people tend to still look for it
when it's not there. Yeah.
When they don't find it, they automatically kind of dismiss the film. I mean, that's more kind of a criticism on film criticism, but I've always find myself going back to this movie and getting stuff out of it every single time I watch it. For many people, Before Sunset seems to be their favorite of the trilogy, and I don't doubt it because it's an amazing movie. This film for me, I don't know what it is. I can't quite quantify what why I choose this film now over Before Sunset.
What's funny is and I've seen the movies, I think twice, all three of them at least twice. If I'm being honest, Before Sunset's my least favorite of the three, which is funny is I guess it's the hot take.
That is a hot take.
I mean, I get why people like it because it's kind of like the most where they fall in love the most, like where they can actually it's the meat of the story. Just put it that way. It's the
really
meat,
is.
And it's during the day, so they're walking. Aren't they in France or?
I think they're
Paris.
in Paris.
France.
Yeah. You're right.
So they're
I mean, yeah, I guess there are different places in France. I mean, they could have been. I don't know.
They're definitely in Europe. And they're
Yeah, they're in Paris.
They're walking, and it's daytime. The first movie, a majority of the movie's at night, and which is great. But I think that's part of what makes people get lured into that second film is that it's so much brighter and it's so much more them with some age on them, and now they've had experiences, and now they're falling back in love with each other again.
Yeah. Yeah, the first film has a young person's naivete to it. You know what I mean? Like, they're just two young people searching for meaning in life and searching for whatever. And then the second film takes place, and we probably should say this, takes place 9 years later. So they're, like almost a decade older, decade more experienced. They have more, they've lived more of their lives, and they can talk about more, different, more mature things and more.
They know what they want. They more know what they want now.
Yeah, they're more mature, more intelligent, if you will. And the ending of the second film, though, is really maybe the best ending of all three films, though, I would say.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't want to give it away because I would like people to see it, but it's an open-ended ending, but it's almost like you know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you could almost string all three of these movies together and then say 9 years later. I mean, that's kind of what you can do with it.
Right.
But to me, I mean, like, a lot of people have trouble with the third film, Before Midnight, because it's so.
Let's just say it's life after love.
It's got a visceral. It's got a cynical visceralness to it that is hard for people to watch.
The first two films are all about falling in love, and the third film is about what it's like to have lived with that love and what is past that love.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, where life takes you after that. Does that love last? Is that love still powerful? Is that enough to keep two people together? And it's tough to watch when you've watched these two people through these two films and you've loved watching them. It's tough to see people go through that, but it's also very realistic. Yeah. You know what I mean? Relationships are very complicated. That's why I stay perpetually single.
Just keep it in the movies.
But, yeah, I'll just use that.
I'll just watch other people.
I just watch other people. I know what happens. Cool. Yeah, I just watch other. I've seen movies. I know what happens. But it's really realistic in showing how even the people who have what you believe to be the strongest and most powerful love things can lead to complicated areas. But that's a whole kind of minuscule breakdown.
Yeah, we'll definitely hit them movies
But moving on a much lighter note.
It's my turn.
Is your turn? Go.
Because I got a lighter movie for you. All right.
Okay.
1981 Scanners. Is that lighter?
I was just going to say that. I was going to go Scanners. I was going to go something else that I'll probably go right after. But yeah, Cronenberg Scanners.
Yes.
Nothing says light like heads exploding,
there's nothing.
Right?
I mean, lighting it on fire. Bam. But we know how much I've talked about. I mean, I love David Cronenberg. We did what did we do? Did we do
Existence?
Yes. And I just love I love the themes that David Cronenberg explores in his films, usually about sex and violence and how that ties
stuff.
into our psyche, and even in his later films, he's delved in them in more direct ways, whether it be like A Dangerous Method, but yeah, with Scanners, it's just kind of, to me, I look at it as the 1980s X-Men movie, in a way. You have...
That's not a bad comparison.
People that basically have the power of telepathy, and the government kind of basically kidnaps one guy that seems to have the ability, but seems to be a good dude. So they need his help to stop this guy that has telepathy. That's a bad guy, and they basically, it's kind of an X-Men movie in a way. It's not obviously nearly as graphics heavy. There's definitely some great makeup effects and things like that.
Oh yeah, it's a low budget, like it's Canadian.
Yeah, it's not an
action
packed. It's not an action packed movie, but it is, got great atmosphere, I think, and there are some really cool iconic scenes. I prefer, people talk about the head explosion, but I like the scene where he electrocutes the dude through the phone, like it melts, and it like melts the phone, and it explodes to like power. It's an awesome scene. But it's a cool movie. I mean, it's not like one of the greatest mind blowing movies, but it's a cool movie. I know, right? There. It's great. But Scanners, yes, you should watch it.
Yeah, it's Cronenberg right before. I would say it's Cronenberg right before we know Cronenberg as we know him.
I think he started to get a little bit honed in more on his.
Like the films he did after Scanners are the films that we know him for more than the films he did before Scanners and before. Like after this, he did Videodrome, The Dead Zone, The Fly, Dead Ringers, Naked Lunch, M Butterfly, Crash, Existence, on and on. Before it's like Scanners is like that kind of like mid-level point where like things before Scanners and after Scanners are different in terms of like, production budgets were higher and concepts were more realized and stuff like that. But Scanners is such a cool movie. Yeah. What is interesting to me is that if you've ever seen a poster for Scanners, it's kind of spoiling the climax of the movie. Yeah. Because it's usually just like an artistic rendering of the climactic scene in the movie for the most part, a little bit, or it's a hint at it. I just found that to be odd. But yeah, Scanners is great. But the movie that I'm going to talk about is Tremors.
Yes.
Coincidentally, Scanners, Tremors. This movie I've rewatched recently because Arrow put out a really great 4K release. A special edition with all kind of special features, and it looks amazing, by the way. Can't recommend that release enough. But this is such a fun movie that came out in 1990. Kevin Bacon's in the movie, Fred Ward is in it, Michael Gross, Reba McEntire's in the movie. It's a really great like monster movie, done in an ingenious way on like a lower budget. And I know it's gotten like several sequels and stuff like that. But I've only ever seen the original movie, and I'm almost afraid to see the sequels because I know they were like straight to DVD sequels.
From what I understand, like they're obviously not at the level, I think, especially budget wise. But I've heard that some of them are actually pretty fun, so they might be worth checking out down the road. So.
Yeah, because the first film is fun. For those of you who don't know. Tremors basically is this it takes place in like this small, super small, rustic town, like out in the middle of like the desert somewhere. And basically, what happens is these giant underground creatures or sandworms, if you will, kind of show up and just start terrorizing them. And it's all about them trying to survive. So it's like a monster movie, if you will. And it's just a lot of fun. It's a short movie. It's only an hour and 36 minutes, so it moves like lightning. But I really, really like it a lot. It's kind of a quintessential, January fun movie.
Yeah, definitely. Once again, another light movie I can throw at you.
Nice.
Blood Simple, 1985.
Oh.
Came out in January, from the Coen brothers. If I'm remembering correctly, Jennifer Jason Leigh's in this movie. Am I thinking of the right actress?
No, Frances McDormand.
No, you're right, Frances McDormand. I should have known. She's been in so many of their movies.
She's in all that. Well, she's married to Joel Coen, I think.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Let me actually look that up so I'm not...
But Blood Simple's kind of a crime thriller. It's not super, heavy on plot. It's about, greed and, betrayal, and, it's, bar owner finds out his wife's cheating on him, and, it just gets crazy, it's just a cool crime movie, I don't want to give too much away.
Yes, Frances McDormand is married to Joel Coen. They've been married since 1984. Coincidentally, right around when this movie came out.
I wonder how she got the role. No.
I don't know how she met him. But anywho, so this is actually, I believe, the Coen brothers' first movie.
I think it's their first feature,
and this was actually done before they could be before they could be credited as the Coen brothers, and one of them would have to take the
I think
credit,
usually Joel Coen usually
uncredited.
took the credit, I think.
Yeah, I think he did. At least on this one, definitely. Yeah, this film also stars Emmett Walsh, Dan Hidea's in it. It's a really good, also kind of crime neo-noir, if you will. This also has a Criterion release from a few years ago, which I really, really have been wanting to get, because I have the original Blu-ray release, and I know they did a new transfer for Blood Simple, and I heard it looks really, really good. And I think there's an extra feature on there where I think Guillermo del Toro is talking about the movie, if I remember correctly. It's a really good film. And when we did a whole episode on first films for directors, and I believe we mentioned Blood Simple because it is kind of an amazing first film. Yeah. I mean, to come right out of the gate with this movie is really kind of incredible. I was just looking to see if that extra feature is on there. No, it's not. Apparently, I don't know where I heard.
Stop
Guillermo
making
del Toro
up
talking
stuff.
about Blood Simple. I'm probably making up stuff. Jeez. Who knows? Well, there's a conversation. There's an extra feature called A Conversation with Dave Eggers, but that's not. That's not Guillermo del Toro. Obviously.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. But.
All right, Andrew, move on. Move on.
Yeah, move on.
You're next.
Next, let's stay in the light realm. I'm gonna go with From Dusk Till Dawn.
I didn't catch this one.
Which is the Robert Rodriguez film from 1996. Talk about January horror movie fun. I was actually gonna ask you, Steven, is this film would you consider it a cult movie, or is it just a good movie? I just feel like it's both.
I think.
I
think it's both. I mean, I think it's one of the movies that, with time, has definitely gotten more popular because of, George Clooney being in it. Of course, it also stars Quentin Tarantino in an acting role.
I know he's not. The thing is, Quentin Tarantino's not. He's not. Actor.
No.
And what's funny is that originally he wanted to be an actor.
Yeah.
Before he became a director, and every time you see him pop up, it's like maybe.
Now, I mean, I
just think of his Australian.
He gives himself a cameo and everything, so it's like
I think of his Australian accent in Django and how terrible it was.
Yeah.
But then I also realized that apparently the person who was supposed to have that role just didn't show up that day, so he had to like fill in. But anywho, that's just
and I would say I give him credit for having the balls to give himself the role in Pulp Fiction where he says the N-word like multiple times.
He really puts that in his movies, and probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't. But he does have a cameo in this. Not a cameo. He is in the movie for a little while. I'm not going to say anything, but he also co-wrote the screenplay with Robert Rodriguez. And well, he wrote the screenplay. Robert Kurtzman wrote the story.
Yeah.
So that's two different people. But this is Robert Rodriguez, I think, follow-up to Desperado, because Desperado was his technically second feature film. And yeah, this is a vampire film, for those of you who want to be spoiled. It's an action horror film, came out January 19th, 1996. Like I said, George Clooney's in it, Quentin Tarantino, Harvey Keitel, Juliette Lewis. Salma Hayek is in this movie, and you'll see this all over the internet. There's always a still or always a gif or a meme or whatever of Salma Hayek in this film when she's like dancing with the snake and stuff like that, looking just impeccably gorgeous as she still does and probably always will at this point. Danny Trejo's in this movie for obvious reasons, because he's in everything. Tom Savini, who's been around forever. He was doing makeup work, I think, on Dawn of the Dead back in the 70s. Michael Parks is also in the movie. This movie's a really great kind of cult movie. There have been several, like I said, straight to DVD sequels. There's been a television series adaptation done by Robert Rodriguez for his El Rey network a few years ago, which I think only lasted a couple of seasons. But yeah, it's I've always really loved watching this movie and rewatching this movie. I would really love for this movie to get a really, really good Blu-ray release. It's gotten a couple of releases over the last several years, and none of them have really done the movie justice.
You'd think somebody like Arrow would put this out or something.
It feels like an Arrow or a Scream Factory release or something like that. I hope someone somewhere puts this out and giving us a deluxe edition with like new special features. There was a whole like documentary making of called Full Tilt Boogie, which could use like a release as well. There was a DVD release. I think it was a 2-discer that came out, late 2000s or something, and that had Full Tilt Boogie as well as some other features. But then I think it was Echo Bridge or someone put out a Blu-ray release, had no features on it whatsoever. Do you remember back in the day where they would put like 4 movie like they would put like From Dusk Till Dawn and like 3 of its sequels like on like 1 disc or 2 discs, and they would put out these packs and they would be in like the $5 bin at Walmart and stuff. And that's kind of how this movie was always treated, and I always hated that because I thought this movie was good enough to get its own deluxe treatment. So yeah, I would love for that to happen. So that's From Dusk Till Dawn. Check it out if you love kind of action horror movies. Directed by Robert Rodriguez, who I think is still to this day, I think is an underrated director.
He's an underrated director, but he just, I think he has a hard time picking things that always work. I don't know that he always picks the greatest.
I will say this, his catalog, his filmography, I was going to say fluctuates, but it's very varied in terms of content. The more I look at it, I mean, he did all those Spy Kids movies. He did Shark Boy and Lava Girl, but he also did like From Dusk Till Dawn and Desperado and Once Upon a Time in Mexico. And I think he produced that movie.
Yeah, he directed Predators, the one with Adrian Brody in it. Didn't he direct?
I know the one you're talking about. But he also but then he did like Alita Battle Angel.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty good.
And then he just directed an episode of The Mandalorian, and he's going to be doing... Isn't he going to be doing the whole Boba Fett series?
I think that's...
By himself?
I think so.
I've always been a big And he did Machete.
Yeah.
Machete Kills. So he's done like everything. He's producing a Zorro TV series. I mean, look at his filmography, people. Also, what I've really loved about him is he's always been really open about making movies. I read his book, Rebel Without a Film Crew. It's just a diary of his making of El Mariachi. Yeah. Just all the steps he took to make that movie and get it sold and all that kind of stuff. How he did like those like you can sign up for like psychiatric experiments for money, where people would like test drugs on you and stuff. Like that's how he funded the movie. But anywho, that's a whole trivia stuff. Yeah. I'm getting off
it's
there.
all right. One interesting point, it's funny how as physical media has fizzled out that we're getting a lot more, I think, releases of kind of cult movies and like movie, but before they all got grouped into these multi-packs that you were talking about. Like I feel like we're actually getting more variety now than we did before. I don't know why.
What I have found more recently, and you'll have to probably reel me in on this, is that the more I would say B movies, cult movies of like the 70s, 80s, and 90s are actually getting treated much better when it comes to physical media in terms of like the presentation of the movie, extras, and all that kind of stuff than mainstream movies are getting treated.
I think maybe what's happening is that the studios are not giving a shit about their physical media, so they're just selling them off to these boutique labels and these, and saying, hey, you can have the license to the physical media. I don't care. We'll make a buck here or there. Who cares?
It's like, just
as long as they have the streaming rights. They have the streaming rights. They think it doesn't matter because nobody likes to buy movies anymore. So,
and to be honest, it's probably more cost effective for them because all they have to do is just hand over, the masters or the elements that they have. And then like the boutique labels can do what they want with them in terms of like restorations or remasterings or whatever. I mean, unfortunately, sometimes they hand you masters that aren't very good, and you kind of have to deal with what you have to deal with. But like I was saying, they're treating them with a lot more respect and care and effort than I've seen mainstream studios treat mainstream movies nowadays. In terms of like, in terms of restorations and stuff like that, I find that studios, when it comes to their back catalog titles, they'll put maximum effort into their prestige back catalog. Like, they'll always keep putting out the same movies over and over again, but they'll just kind of leave the other ones, like, derelict. They'll just, like, push them off to the side and don't talk about them.
There hasn't been more releases of Die Hard than anything I've ever,
Yeah, like, how many releases of Die Hard are we going to get? How many more releases of... I mean, now that 4K is around, all of the old back catalog stuff is being re-released in 4K. I mean, I know, as a collector, I just rebought Jaws and Back to the Future in 4K.
Jesus.
You know what I mean? So they got my money, but it's like, how many more releases are they going to keep doing of those movies, but not giving us good releases of, some other title in their back catalog? For years and years, I always had that running joke, Steven, about when is Roman Holiday going to get a Blu-ray release, and it finally
got it.
So, finally got it, and like I said, I don't know if it was last episode or a few episodes ago, Paramount just woke up out of a several years long coma and decided to start releasing their back catalog of titles. So I don't know what's going on.
I think they're figuring they might as well do it and make a few extra bucks. I guess I don't know.
I guess so. But anywho, let's move on to... You got anything else?
Yeah, another kind of in the horror genre. If I remember, 1987, The Stepfather.
Oh, wow.
The original Stepfather, not the one that they...
Not the
remake. But the... what is it? Anthony Quinn? What is this? What is his name? Terry McQuinn.
Oh, Terry O'Quinn from Lost?
Yeah, he's the one that plays the stepfather in the original. This...
Yeah, 1987 Terry O'Quinn. Is that... Yep. Yep.
Well, this has a Shout. I think it's a Shout Factory release, and it's about just a guy who's basically a serial murderer. I mean, I mean, it starts out, and he's with his family, and everything seems to be all cheery, and then suddenly something switches his mind, and he just murders them all, and then he basically goes on to another family. He like makes a woman fall in love with him, and then he's like the man of somebody, and then basically the kid becomes suspicious and tries to fight back. It's just a straight up kind of like I wouldn't say it's a slasher, but it's definitely kind of just a straightforward movie about a psychotic man who goes around and murders families. But it's got some interesting. It's a very great performance by Terry O'Quinn. If you've seen him from Lost, this would be a good one to go back and watch. So, yeah, I recommend.
Nice. But I'm gonna go now. I'm truly gonna go lighter this time. I'm gonna go with the comedy. Waiting for Guffman.
Ah, yes.
The Christopher Guest movie came out January 31st, 1997. It's technically a 1996 release because it did get a few, looks like, film festivals in 1996. Actually got Boston Film Festival and then Toronto. And then that was about, and then it got its theatrical release January 31st of 97. Yeah, I mean, if you've never seen a Christopher Guest movie, it's tough to explain because the comedy is so unique and so quirky and dry and snarky and well written and satirical. But yeah, this movie stars Christopher Guest. Yeah, he's in the movie, but it has his usual troupe of like Parker Posey, Catherine O'Hara, Eugene Levy, Fred Willard is in the film. It's basically in a small town. This local musical producer is going to be putting on this play, and he thinks like this big Broadway a guy is going to be in attendance, so he wants to make it the best he possibly can, and it's just really funny. It's a mockumentary type film, which Christopher Guest has done several times, and he always has the weirdest, just oddball characters in his movies, and his filmography is just filled with movies like this. And this may be a lot of people's favorite. My personal favorite from his films has always been Best in Show. I just think that's just really funny. It's all about a dog show and the pageantry and just zaniness around there. A Mighty Wind is another great film from him. But yeah, I just really, really love his films. So check it out if you haven't. But I don't know if would you say this is the best one to start with, or would you start with another of his films? If someone had never seen Christopher Guest film before.
I mean, Waiting for Guffman's a pretty good start. I mean, I don't know. I mean, he did a Fish Called Wanda too, didn't he? No.
That was, who was that actually? Was he in that
He's
movie,
in that
or?
movie, I think.
I think that was done by 1988. It was done by Charles Crichton and John Cleese.
Okay, John Cleese.
Yeah, because John Cleese wrote the story. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I haven't seen it.
I feel like that Waiting for Guffman's a good one. I would always recommend Best in Show for people because Best in Show has a bunch of cute dogs in it, and that's always nice to look at. At least if you don't like the movie, at least you can get to see the cute dogs.
I guess.
Get something
if
out
you
of
like
it.
dogs, I guess.
Oh, come on now.
I like dogs.
All
right. Well.
Yeah.
So we can move this forward a little faster. I got a few more left. I'm gonna group these two movies because they're not necessarily like fantastic movies. But I like these movies, so I'm just gonna throw them one here. 1997, Beverly Hills Ninja.
Oh, I love this movie.
With Chris Farley.
I saw this movie so many times
in
the theater.
Yes.
I think I rented it. I watched it so many times.
This isn't a great movie, but it's hilarious.
Oh, yeah, but it's hilarious. I don't know if that's nostalgic.
It's nostalgic. It is. I
would have been like around 10 years old, so that's like a sweet nostalgic age.
Yeah, and so this is about it's kind of Kung Fu Panda if you think about it. But basically, Chris Farley he tries to become a ninja in a I guess it's in somewhere in China. I guess that's.
Well, I would say.
Is it Japan?
But...
I don't know.
Yeah, that's where the ninjas.
Is that the word? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about ninjas. But basically, he tries to go on like a quest to prove that he's got what it takes, and his brother, his kind of adopted brother, goes to America. He's played by Liu Kang from Mortal Kombat.
I know. Talk about a blast from the past. Right? Goddamn.
And he goes and kind of helps him out without him knowing, and it's got some great physical comedy. And if you love Chris Farley, you'll be into this movie, I think. And then the other movie I was going to group with it, which I actually think is a pretty underrated movie, is from the same year, and it's called Desperate Measures.
Never seen it.
It's got Michael Keaton and Andy Garcia in it, and it's about Andy Garcia plays a cop whose son needs a bone marrow transplant, and so they find out that a match that of his is from a kind of like a high level, criminal, played by Michael Keaton, and so basically the movie's about how Michael Keaton's character uses this. This attempt at he allows them to take bone marrow from him, so they had to take him to the hospital, but then he turns it into an escaped attempt, and so the whole movie's in like a hospital, and they're trying to find him, and he's trying to escape the hospital, and it's also about the morality around saving the kid and stuff like that. So like, it's a cool action movie. I like it. It's a fun one.
Yeah. Nice. So I'm gonna go. Well, one we didn't mention super early on, a silent movie, a movie that I believe we've talked about on the podcast as well. That is Charlie Chaplin's The Kid. Also came out in January. Check out that episode. I believe we did about it. Also, I'm gonna group these two together because one is the first movie and one is the second movie. And yeah, this is more. We're talking about more modern movies now because we're winding down the podcast. But Paddington and Paddington 2 are probably two of the more delightful, heartwarming films you'll ever see. Just super, super happy movies. Very emotionally heartwarming and beautiful films. A wonderful casts in both Paddington and Paddington 2. Honestly, I think these are two of the more, underrated family films that I think should get more notoriety. One came out in 2014, and the other one came out, 2018?
Yeah.
Or so? Just wonderful films. And then completely switching, 2017 was Paddington 2. These movies started, like, Sally Hawkins is in it, Ben Whishaw does the voice of Paddington, Hugh Bonneville. It's a wonderful, wonderful films. But now completely switching gears here. And kind of what I think is an important movie for many different reasons. and this is because it kind of like gave studios and people the mindset that perhaps January isn't the dumping ground or degenerate movie month that we all thought it was. And that is Taken, starring one Liam Neeson. And the reason why I say this is an important movie, it's because that mindset, and then now it has changed, studios thinking that, okay, maybe we don't have to dump our shitty movies into January. We can actually put a good movie in January and it'll work. And also, this movie functioned as a second act of Liam Neeson's career, where he's now an action star. I mean, he was always, granted, he was in The Phantom Menace as a Jedi Knight, kind of an action role. But I don't think Liam Neeson was ever really quite an action actor before Taken.
Yeah.
And this was 2008 for those of you keeping... Well, 2009, actually, for those of you keeping track.
Yeah, and, the thing is you could say based off the fact that this Taken sequel sucks so much that maybe...
Yeah, I was just going to mention that too. The sequels suck. Don't watch them.
that maybe this was an accident, but...
it was a happy accident.
Yeah.
When I say the sequels suck, I mean, then I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
I don't know. The second movie, the second movie has one of the worst edited car chase sequences I've ever seen in any movie ever. So bad. But Taken is such a tight, 90-minute thriller, bit of a throwback, if you will, to the kind of the 90-minute thrillers perhaps of the 90s. But for those of you who don't know, basically Liam Neeson used to be like a CIA agent, so he has all of these badass CIA skills. Where what happens is his daughter gets, you'll never believe this, Stephen, she gets taken while on vacation in Europe. Not the best place to go. What frustrated me about the sequels is they kept going back to Europe.
Taken again.
It made no sense why these people weren't super traumatized and super protective of their daughter after that first film. And the reason why I say that, I'm a bit of a spoiler here, Stephen, she almost gets sold into sex slavery and sex trafficking in Europe.
Yeah.
So, once something like that happens, you may not want to go on vacation there ever again.
I don't know, man.
Apparently in the sequel, we have to do it.
It happens here in America, too, so I guess you really not safe anywhere.
No, but I'm just saying, the sequels that's why the sequels partially made no sense to me, because it almost seemed like we're recycling the same plot over and over again, as if the characters have amnesia.
And then I remember the third movie, if I'm thinking of the right one,
is basically The Fugitive.
Well, it also, I remember a scene where she throws grenades on buildings or something, like it was okay.
Oh, that was the second movie.
God, the movies are terrible.
Her dad. So her dad gets kidnapped, and in order for him to know her location or something like that, or she I don't know, something happens where in order for him to hear where someone is, she has to make noise, so she starts throwing grenades off a rooftop in a busy populated city, probably killing massive amounts of people.
It's so stupid.
It really is. But
that's the moral of the story, is that we get into our dumping grounds the further along we...
Yeah, a lot of these movies do have their faults.
Yeah. The last one I have listed here, obviously we're going to miss a lot of stuff. I didn't scour the internet for every January release I thought were pretty good. And of course I haven't seen everything, but the last one I got down here is one that I like also. Not high quality. It's a movie I like. It's called Daybreakers. I think it's a underrated vampire film. 2010. I got Ethan Hawke once again back on our list from January, from Before Sunrise.
He's always around.
And it's basically about how vampires have taken over, but now they're running low on human blood, so they have to start coming up with alternative ways to get blood, and then it turns that there's a couple of different storylines, but basically some I guess you could say some of the vampires that are going I guess you could say hungry are becoming feral. They're becoming the monster versions of vampires instead of the more eloquent versions.
Happens to
the best of us, yeah. So and it's there's the last little bit of human resistance that are involved in the storyline too. I think it's an underrated vampire movie. I think it's cool. It's slick.
I do tend to agree with you. It is a rather underrated vampire film from the last decade or so. Is Willem Dafoe in this movie?
He is. Yeah.
Okay. Another one that I think the last one on my list coincidentally came out a couple of years before this, and this is another kind of, it's a horror movie. A Cloverfield.
10 Cloverfield Lane?
No.
Oh, the original Cloverfield.
The original Cloverfield. Directed by Matt Reeves, I believe. Is it Matt Reeves? Directed by Matt Reeves, but written by Drew Goddard. That's
and
the
produced by
connection
J.J. Abrams.
there. And produced by J.J. Abrams. And yeah, this came out in January of 2008, and I remember that because I went and saw this movie in theaters in January of 2008.
This was a big movie. It
Yes.
was, mostly controversial because of its camera movement style.
Yeah, it's one of those found footage films.
Yeah.
Where the 2000s were full of them because people loved like that whole kind of subgenre in the horror thriller field was
But this
popular
was
post Blair Witch
yeah,
Project.
but this was an attempt to do found footage in a higher budget way.
Yes.
Like usually there.
And a monster movie version.
Yeah, so it was something that was a little new and different with the messing around with the genre, and I personally liked it when it came out. I still like the movie. I can understand why maybe some people have a trouble watching it because it is shaky cam. There's a lot of that, and
You can get nauseous while
maybe
watching it.
But
I mean, maybe things won't be so clear to you, but it kind of, I think that's the point of it, is to keep you off kilter.
Yeah.
With the shaky cam, you're like, I don't know what's going on, what's happening. I mean, just to keep you kind of on the edge of your seat, if you will. And there have been, how do I say this, Stephen? Sequels in quotes. Basically,
I mean, they're like in universe like spinoffs.
But they were movies that weren't necessarily originally supposed to be sequels or in the Cloverfield universe, and they were manipulated to be.
Well, specifically the second film. It started out as a
like 10 Cloverfield Lane. Until I don't want to spoil it, but I'll just say this. Like, I don't think that a movie was originally supposed to be called 10 Cloverfield Lane. Like, I think it was supposed to be called something else. And the third movie, the third Cloverfield movie, which is...
The Paradox, yeah.
Yeah, was it Cloverfield Paradox or something like that? Yeah, the Cloverfield Paradox, which takes place in space. Like, they just intercut, like, monster footage on Earth to make it a Cloverfield movie. And it looked really, like, ramshackled together, like ramrodded together. Like, they just really forced it. I don't know why they didn't just make direct sequels. Because I think the movie had enough, like, left you with enough questions and enough wondering as to, like, okay, where did all of this start? Where is all of this going? What's happening with other people in other places? You could have made those straight up direct sequels instead of forcing these other movies to be direct sequels.
I would say 10 Cloverfield Lane works.
Although 10 Cloverfield Lane is an awesome movie.
It really works, like that movie a lot. Though it is kind of shoehorned at the end. I think
that was what I was trying to.
I think it does work though.
John Goodman is amazing in that movie. Frighteningly amazing. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is in that film as well. She's always been one of my favorites ever since Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and I think she's a fantastic actress. She's in that movie as well. Yeah, that's a really good sequel. Like, I'm willing to forgive that movie because it works. Yeah. Whereas the Cloverfield Paradox doesn't work.
I do hope they make more movies in the universe, though.
I do so too. I thought they were trying to make a Cloverfield TV series, but maybe I dreamt that up. I know they were trying to do a Tremors TV series on FX with Kevin Bacon back in his original role, and they shot a pilot for it and everything, and they just didn't pick it up to series, which is unfortunate because that would have been a really cool like sequel series. I think sequel series right now are hot too. So I don't know what FX was thinking.
Well, that's it. I think we've talked about a good amount of movies there. We got a good 25 movies or so in there from January. If there was any that we missed, anything that has popped up in your head. Now, of course, we specifically kind of were picking releases that were American released, not necessarily. I mean, obviously, the releases happen in all different times of the year and all over the country, all over the world. So, these were more specifically released in January in America. Keep that in mind. But if there's some that we've missed, please throw them at us in comments. Yeah. Anything else?
No, that's about it. I'll say it was really tough to go back and find, do a thorough look without deep diving into individual January, month, year by year. Basically, when you did kind of a broad overall search for this type of stuff, you kept seeing the same movies pop up over and over again.
And they're not always
and they're
not always that great of movies either. You're like, eh.
No, and actually, I think, I don't know, my mindset was to find movies that, I liked, that I had watched and that I enjoy. That was my mindset going into it. And my mindset was also like, I don't want it to be a movie that premiered at a film festival or a movie that was kind of a holdover from, like an awards, sometimes, award movies will get mass released in January when they had limited releases in December or November. Yeah. I didn't want any of that stuff because that stuff tends to be misleading. Yeah. Because, those movies are great. They're awards contenders. Of course they're going to be great movies. But give me a theatrical, like a wide theatrical release that was originally in the month of January. Yeah. I'll say this, though. The month of February is different. When I was looking at lists, they kind of lumped January and February together, and I kept seeing Silence of the Lambs. That came out in February of all months, and that ended up winning Best Picture. And I'm like, that would never happen today. There's no way a February movie would be remembered by the Academy Awards in the following year.
Closest we got was Get Out recently. It was like Get Out came out like really early in the year and got.
I think that was a February release. Yeah. I mean, and February is not really a dumping month anymore because you get big movies put out in February.
Well, Deadpool changed that.
Deadpool changed that, and that was only 5 years ago now. I keep having to do that mental math now, where it's one more year away from a specific year than it was before. Like if we had done this, a month ago, I'd be like, oh yeah, Deadpool came out 4 years ago. Now it's 5 years ago. That's the way time works.
Time sucks.
Makes me do math. I don't want to do math.
I don't like math either.
Steven.
Well, I'm going to math us out of this. Where can we find you, Andrew?
You can find me on Twitter at Kebzilla06, as well as my YouTube channel, Kebzilla Productions.
And you can find me on Facebook, Stephen Billings. You can find me on Instagram at Cinema Discovery Project or on Letterboxd at Cinema Discovery. You can find the audio for this podcast on Podbean or Apple Podcasts. Thank you once again for listening, and hey, keep on watching them movies.
I know I will.